new here, we are reading the second book of the Wrinkle in Time trilogy, Wind in the Door. You have very beautiful eyes. Oh, thank you, user. Thank you. So, if you're not caught up with the story, you don't know what the story's about, but you just want to relax, then this is the place for you. If you prefer the story and you want to catch up, I do have my YouTube channel that has all the previous chapters and the previous book as well of the trilogy. So you can head over there and go through them. And so we are currently in chapter 10 of the second book. So as usual, for anybody that was in my live last night, I'll read the last paragraph or so of the previous chapter so we can kind of remember where we're at. Alright, so we got everybody in here? Okay. Oh, fight, Charles. Don't stop struggling. Breathe. Breathe. I'll try to help. I'll do anything I can to help, even. Then, she was with the twins. Charles Wallace, she thought, had sent her. Okay, this is chapter 10. Of course, Mr. Jenkins' hand would be damp. He'd be scared out of his wits. He was years away from games of make-believe and let's pretend. Mr. Jenkins, are you all right? She felt a fumbling kything, a frightened inability to accept that they were actually in a mitochondrion within one of Charles Wallace's cells. How long have we been here? I'm not sure. So much has happened. Progo, you're sure we're in Farandolae time, not Earth time? Farandolae time, she told Mr. Jenkins in relief. That means that time on Earth is passing much more slowly than time is for us. Cons more slowly. Charles Wallace's heart beats only once every decade or so. Even so, Prognowski's warned, there's no time to waste. Hello, how are you? Minnesota! Hi. Another flash of Charles Wallace's face, ashen, eyes closed, breathing labored, of her mother's face, tight with pain, of Dr. Louise, watchful, waiting. She stood with her small hand lightly against Charles Wallace's wrist. I know, Meg answered the cherubim. A cold wind seemed to blow through the interstices of her ribs. She must be strong for Charles Wallace now, so that he may draw on that strength. She held her mind quiet and steady until it calmed. Then she opened herself up again to Miss Jenkins. Muddy thoughts, which could hardly qualify as kything, moved about her like sluggish water. And yet she understood that Mr. Jenkins was being more open with her than he had ever been before, or than he ever was able to be with most people. His mind shuddered into Meg's as he tried to grasp the extraordinary fact that he was still himself, still Mr. Jenkins, at the same time that he was a minuscule part of the child who had been one of his most baffling and irritating problems at school. Meg tried to let him know, in as unalarming a way as possible, that at least one of the ecthroi, Mr. Jenkins's, was with them on Yada. She did not want to recall her terror during her encounter with one of them, but she had to help Mr. Jenkins understand. He sent her a response, first of bafflement, then fear, then a strange tenderness toward her. You should not be asked to endure such things, Margaret. There's more, she told him. This more was hardest of all, to make him understand that some of the little Farandolae, some of the playful, dancing creatures, had saved her from the Ecthros, Mr. Jenkins, and had sacrificed themselves in doing so. Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining, and thank you for the likes. Mr. Jenkins groaned. From Projanowski's, Meg relayed to the principal. It was better than letting the Ecthroi X them. They're still part of the creation this way. She turned her Kything to Projanowski's. If the Ecthroi X something, or if something X's itself, is it forever? I got keto hair on me. There it is. By keto. By keto. That's funny. The cherubim surrounded her with the darkness of his unknowing. God, more keto hair. Where is it? There it is. Oh no. I feel it. I feel it. Tiger, good evening. Good evening. The cherubim surrounded her with the darkness of his unknowing. But we don't need to know, Meg, he told her firmly, and the darkness began to blow away. I am a cherubim. All I need to know is that all the galaxies, all the stars, all creatures, cherubic, human, Farandolan, all are known by name. He seemed almost to be crooning to himself. Meg kithed at him sharply. You're Progo. I'm Meg. He's Mr. Jenkins. Now what are we supposed to do? Projanowski's came back into focus. Mr. Jenkins does not want to understand what a Farandolae is. Evil is evil, Mr. Jenkins sent fumblingly Megward. She felt his mind, balking at the idea of communication where distance was no barrier. Mice talk by squeaking and shrimp bite. I don't know much about marine biology, but they must make some sound. But trees, he expostulated. Mice who put down roots and turn into trees. You did say trees. No, Meg was impatient. Not so much at Mr. Jenkins as at her own ineptitude in communicating with him. The fairy, well, they aren't unlike trees, sort of primordial ones, and they aren't unlike coral and underwater things like that. Trees cannot talk with each other. Fairy can, and as for trees, don't they? Nonsense. Mr. Jenkins, when you walk through the woods at home, and the wind moves in the trees, don't you ever have the feeling that if you knew how, you'd be able to understand what they were saying? Never. It had been a long time since he had walked in the woods. He moved from his lodgings to the school, from the school to his lodgings, driving himself both ways. He did not have time to go for walks in the woods. She felt a dim regret in his kything, so she tried to make him hear the sound of wind in the pine woods. If you close your eyes, it sounds like ocean waves, even though we're not anywhere near the ocean. All she felt from Mr. Jenkins was another cold wash of incomprehension. So she envisioned a small grove of aspens for him, each leaf shivering and shaking separately, whispering softly in the still summer air. I'm too old, Mr. Jenkins' response. I'm much too old. I'm just holding you back. You ought to return me to Earth. Meg forgot that she had recently made exactly that suggestion. Anyhow, Yada is on Earth, or in Earth, sort of, since it's in Charles Wallace. No, Mr. Jenkins said, it's too much. I'm no help. I don't know why I thought I might be. His kything trailed off. Through his discouragement, she became aware of Calvin. Hey, Meg. Communication implies sound. Communion doesn't. He sent her a brief image of walking silently through the woods, the two of them alone together, their feet almost noiseless on the rusty carpet of pine needles. They walked without speaking, without touching, and yet they were as close as is possible for two human beings to be. They climbed up through the woods, coming out into the brilliant sunlight at the top of the hill. That's keto. Love it. Sorry. Keto found his toy. It's a bit different since the last time I was on. Snape, hi! How are you? Oh my goodness. Lance, welcome. Great, no worries, we all get busy, bud. How have you been? Sorry I've been a stranger. Oh my goodness. Good day, mate. Ha! Welcome, welcome. Yeah, I just haven't gotten ready for bed yet. So I wanted to do this before it got too late because I am trying to do this new sleep schedule thing. Keto playing nuggets. He just like sprinted up the stairs after the toy, I guess, scared him. I don't know. I don't know, Keto for the win. Oh my gosh. Welcome, welcome. Okay, we'll continue. A few sumac trees showed their rusty candles. Mountain laurel, shiny, so dark a green the leaves seemed black in the fierceness of sunlight, pressed toward the woods. Meg and Calvin had stretched out in the thick, late summer grass, lying on their backs and gazing up into the shimmering blue of sky, a vault interrupted into only by a few small clouds. Thank you. Thank you, Jenna. And she had been as happy, she remembered, as it is possible to be, and as close to Calvin as she had ever been to anybody in her life, even Charles Wallace. So close that their separate bodies, daisies and buttercups joining rather than dividing them, seemed a single enjoyment of summer and sun and each other. That was surely the purest kind of kything. Mr. Jenkins had never had that kind of communion with another human being, a communion so rich and full that silence speaks more powerfully than words. Again, Calvin was kything with quick, urgent words. The Wall Street Journal. What? Mr. Jenkins reads the Wall Street Journal. Maybe he might have read this. Read what? You remember just a few weeks ago I was telling you about a science project I did years ago when I was in 4th grade? Even the twins were interested in. Meg listened intently, trying to kythe simultaneously to Mr. Jenkins. The subject of the old science project had come up because of the twins' garden. Sandy and Dennis were baffled and irritated. Some of the pepper plants had large, firm, healthy fruit. On others, the peppers were wizened and wrinkled and pale. Kelvin had been taken out to look at the undersized, flabby plants, which showed no visible sign of disease, and he had been reminded of his 4th grade science project. Meg asked, could the plants have... Not a recommendation. I can't read. Come here, Keto. Keto's interrupting tonight, just a bit. Story time. Hi, Infinity. Alright. Keto has been causing a lot of interruptions tonight, I apologize. Round 2, that toy is going down. Oh my gosh. Okay. Calvin had been taken out to look at the undersized, flabby plants. I might just wait for that to stop. How are you guys? We're gonna take a short intermission. the likes. Thank you for sending the likes. That might take a second. Okay. This is so much easier when I do it in my bed. We don't have all these distractions. Hello from Ontario, Canada. Hello. Is that the plate? No, it's Keto's litter box. I have an automatic litter box for him because with the autoimmune disease that I battle and the medicine I take, I have a suppressed immunity. So it's like easier to have an automatic cleaning litter box, so I don't have to potentially get an infection from the bacteria, from any bacteria potentially. So it's just a little noisy sometimes. Aw, thank you. Thank you. So it'll be done shortly. And then we shall continue our bedtime story. Sounds like Keto's getting his hair done. Well, he's munching on this food over there, and the litter box is going on behind me down. I'm in my living room downstairs, so I haven't. Normally, I get ready for bed and then I read in my bed bedtime stories, but I'm trying to get it done earlier, and I wasn't ready for bed quite yet. It's Keto really wants to be the star of the show that he does. He does. And I need to fix the litter box because it gets stuck. That's why it's doing that. I don't know why. I just need to take it all apart, put it back together again. I think the litter gets stuck in it. I think we're almost done. When you gotta go home, I know, right? Yeah, I've been neglecting Keto lately because I haven't been sleeping 20 or 19 hours a day anymore. Are you saying that is a kitty litter box making the noise? I am. Alright, that's the ending sound. We're good. That's it. It's completed its cycle in those modern bathrooms. Yeah, because I was researching, because he deals with chronic UTIs, which can be very dangerous if you don't catch them like right away. And so it actually is really helpful because it helps me to keep track, because it connects to my phone, how often he goes, because a sign of him being blocked is what it's called from the UTI, is frequent attempts at urination. So it helps me to track how often he's trying to go, and then also it keeps me safe with dealing with suppressed, a compromised immune system, because the way that it's set is it's in a bag, so I don't have to like scoop, I don't have to touch anything. So now that would drive me insane. Calm down, I'm here, Slap. How are you? Now for the bidet. You sure he's not playing with it? Yeah, he's eating right now. He does like to watch it though. Usually he's out over there watching it when he goes, like every time. He's seen it a billion times go, but like, how do you even tell your date? What do you mean on my date? It just is what it is. If they think it's weird, then that's their problem. It's definitely very much needed though, and it definitely is helpful for both me and Keto. Where's the monkeys? Where are the monkeys? These monkeys? Like, achievement. That's funny. But yeah, it's downstairs and it's out of the way. So, and I sleep upstairs, so I don't have to hear it or anything. And it does have an option, like, if it does bother you, you can have like bedtime mode, so it doesn't rotate except for during the daytime. It has those options, you know, technology, right? It's the Robo Clean. It is. It's the litter robot is what it's called, I think. Time to get up to 20,000 likes. I'll distract me from being left off right now. Oh my gosh, that is funny. Wait, did I not respond to you? I'm sorry. It is not intentional. I get distracted sometimes. So if I don't respond, if I'm like having a conversation with you and I didn't respond like right back. Just send me another message. It's definitely not intentional. Like, I told somebody else in a message, they thought I was ignoring them, or like they said something wrong, and I'm like, I'm like, I'm gonna quote myself, like, I don't like to ghost people. I like to set boundaries. So I like to set boundaries, not create trauma. So if anybody does something wrong, and I don't ghost people right away, unless it's like them obviously being just brand new troll person, you know, that's different. But if it's somebody who, like, I was talking with or something, and, like, I don't respond, chances are I got distracted. Just don't think I'm weird when I have a compliment on Facebook. That's funny. Wait, on Facebook? I don't think I have any conversations with anybody on Facebook from here. I just use TikTok messages. Litter Robot 3000, it really is. How come on over a drink, but on the kitty litter box makes... I mean, if somebody has trouble with that, I mean, that's really a them problem at that point. Like, I have a cat needs a litter box. If they don't understand that, then I probably shouldn't be on a date with them. Come on over for a drink. That's funny. Alright. I'm in the Midwest. Want to watch a scary movie about Rama's and Jenkins. Oh my gosh. Exactly. Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's get going. We only have a couple more chapters in this book. So. I forgot where I was at. Midwest. Letterboxes are fine. It's when you... Oh my gosh. That's a story, not for me. So, somebody I know in my family one time, my stepdad. My stepdad, like, I was in high school at the time, and this is how you get me distracted, see? And at the time, he was still drinking alcohol, like, not regularly, but, like, when he'd get home, sometimes, like, he would have a single beer. Well, he was starting to deal with a lot of chronic pain, so he made the mistake of mixing a pain medicine with the beer, and that's about when he stopped drinking, like, any alcohol at all because of the interaction, because he started having, like, arthritis, so, like, that was, like, more of a chronic condition. But this moment, I think, is about when he decided to stop drinking altogether, so to not worry about these interactions. He was, like, sleepwalking, and he never had a sleepwalking issue before, and we were all going to bed. We were watching TV before, bed. It was a school night for me, and they went to bed, and I went to bed, and the next thing I know is I had a knock on my door, and it was him, and I'm like, yeah? And he was, like, asking me this question about, like, some, like, complete, like, sleepwalk talk, it made no sense at all. I'm like, and I wasn't catching on yet. And my mom's like, come on, honey. And I'm like, what is going on? Well, then she's like, I think he's sleepwalking. I'm like, oh, have fun with that. Well, then, I guess the next morning, what happened during the nighttime when I was sleeping, my mom told me how he was sleepwalking. He had to go to the bathroom. Well, they had like a master bedroom closet attached to their master bedroom, and that's where they had the litter box for the cat we had. He went to the bathroom in the litter box, sleepwalking, thinking it was the bathroom. Like, thankfully, number one. So yeah, I felt great. That was my stepdad. I did that. I had allergies because of my girlfriend's dog and took Benadryl. Oh no. I felt great. Oh my gosh, stepdad. I know, right? White boxes are fine. It's when you use it without permission. Yeah, so sorry, I had to share that really quick. But I'm going to use an excuse too. Oh my gosh. Stepdad's story is just like a box of chocolates. Oh my gosh. So, okay, focus time. We're back to bedtime stories. Sorry. I just realized people who are like trying to fall asleep to this, like, sorry about that. Okay. Where was I? Wall Street Journal. The subject, okay, here we go. Meg asked, could the plants be having the same kind of trouble mitochondria are having? Could ecthroi bother things like gardens? Calvin pushed this question aside to think about later. Not now, Meg. Listen, I think my science project will help Mr. Jenkins understand. Meg seemed to see Mr. Jenkins' nose twitching, as it always did when he was reluctant. Okay then, she kithed to him, slowly, as simply as possible. Calvin's kithing always a strong current under and through hers. At 9 years of age, Calvin read avidly every book that came into the small village library. The librarian, seeing his pleasure in books, encouraged him, gave him a special corner in the library as his own, and gave him all the old classics of the imagination to read. His span of concentration on these stories was infinite, but he considered most of the work he was given at school a bore, particularly science projects. However, he was also fiercely competitive and determined to be the top of his class in all subjects, even those he considered a waste of time. When the week came when he must turn in the topic of his science project by Friday, he was disinterested and planless. But... Hello. He knew he had to choose something. He was thinking about this with particular urgency on Thursday afternoon when he was helping old Mrs. Buncombe clean her outer attic. What could he choose which would interest the teacher and class and not bore him completely? Mr. Buncombe was not paying him for the dirty and dusty job. Her attic had not been touched for years, but she had bribed him to do it by telling him that there was an old set of china up in the attic, and he could take it as payment. Perhaps she knew that the O'Keefes could never sit down to a meal together, even if they had wanted to, because there weren't enough plates and cups and saucers to go around. The china was in a box at the back of the attic, and it was wrapped in old newspapers. Some of it was broken, much of it was cracked. It certainly was not a set of forgotten Wedgwood or Dresden. Who had bothered to wrap it up as carefully as though it were a priceless heirloom? However, there was enough of the set left to make it worth taking home. He unwrapped it for his mother, who complained ungraciously, if correctly, that it was junk. He cleared up the crumpled yellow newspapers and began to read one. It was an old Wall Street Journal. The date had been torn off, but the paper was brittle and stained, and he knew that it must be a good many years old. His eye caught an article about a series of experiments made by a biologist. The biologist had the idea, unusual at the time, that plants were capable of subjective reactions to stimuli, and he decided to measure the strength of these reactions by attaching electrodes, like those used in a lie detector, to the leaves of a large, healthy philodendron. At that point in the account, a section of paper was torn away, and Calvin lost several sentences. He picked up a statement that electronic needles would record the plant's responses on a graph, much as brainwaves or heart patterns are recorded by the electroencephalogram or electrocardiogram machines. The biologist spent an entire morning looking at the needles moving in a straight line across the paper. Nothing happened. No reactions. The needle did not quiver. The line moved slowly and steadily. The biologist thought, I'll make the plant react. I'll burn one of its leaves. The stylus made wild up and down markings of alarm. The rest of the article was torn off. Mr. Jenkins' thoughts came to Meg quite clearly. A little irritably, I read that article. I thought it was just nonsense. Just some crackpot. Calvin kithed. Most major scientific discoveries have been made by crackpots, or at least people who were thought to be crackpots. My own parents, for instance, Meg added, until some of their discoveries were proved to be true. Calvin continued. Listen, there's more. I found another article among the papers. This one described the biologist going on a cross-country lecturing tour. He asked one of his students to take care of, watch, and record the reactions of his philodendron. Okay, cool. I'm glad. I don't want to be too loud, but I'll scooch closer. Okay. Here, I'll move my table closer. Oops. There. Aw, thank you. Hello! Quick hello! Okay, hopefully I'm a little bit closer to the mic now. It's so good to see you. Yes, thank you. Dorman, how are you? It's good to see you too. Welcome, welcome. We're just finishing the last few chapters of the second book of the Wrinkle in Time trilogy. Alright, let me get a drink real quick. I hope you guys' this evening is going well. Okay, better? It's like green, so let's keep going. Trying to sound contrast as well. Alright, you ready? The plant's alarm needles jumped nervously whenever the biologist's plane took off or landed. How would it know? Meg asked. I'll read the previous one because I missed something. This one described the biologist going on a cross-country lecturing tour. He asked one of his students to take care of, watch, and record the reactions of his philodendron, his plant. The plant's alarm needles jumped nervously whenever the biologist's plane took off or landed. How would it know? Meg asked. It did. But the distance, she protested. How could a plant, just an ordinary domestic philodendron, know what was happening miles and miles away? Or care, came dourly from Mr. Jenkins. Distance doesn't seem to be any more important than size or time. As for caring, well, that's outside the realm of provable fact. For his project, Calvin had worked out a variation on the theme of plant response. He had no way of measuring the subjective responses of a plant, so he decided to plant 3 bean seeds. Mr. Jenkins did not think much of this. Meg kithed him a warning. Wait, this was all Calvin's own idea. He was only 9 years old then, and he didn't know that experiments of the same kind were already being made. Calvin planted one of the seeds in a pot, which he left in the kitchen at home. He put it in the windowsill, where it would get sunlight, and he watered it daily. His brothers and sisters were warned that if they touched it, they'd get clobbered. They knew he meant it, and they left his plant physically alone. However, the plant heard. Without ears? Mr. Jenkins kithed crossly. Like Louise, maybe, Meg returned. The plant heard the automatic ugly invective of daily speech in Calvin's home. Calvin himself stayed in the house as little as possible. The other 2 seeds he took to the library, where the librarian gave him permission to put his pots in 2 sunny windows. One of those beans he watered and cared for dutifully. That was all. The 3rd bean he talked to, encouraging it, urging it to grow. When the first green shoot appeared, he lavished on it all with love, which had so little outlet in his home. He sat after school, close by his plant, doing his homework, reading aloud, and when nobody was around, sharing. The first of the bean plants, the one in the O'Keefe's kitchen, was puny and too pale a green, like the twin sickly peppers. The second plant in the library window, the plant given regular care but no special time or attention, grew normally. The third plant, the plant Calvin loved, grew strong and green and unusually large and healthy. Mr. Jenkins kithed thinly but quite comprehensibly. If philodendron and beans can react like that, it should help me to understand Farandolae. Is that what you're trying to tell me? Sort of, Meg replied. Calvin added, See, distance doesn't matter. They can know and converse with each other, and distance doesn't really exist for them. Mr. Jenkins sent out waves of disbelief. And if they're loved, they'll grow, and if they aren't loved, the ecthroi can move in. Now she heard what could only be sporos twinkling. They're dull and slow, like all human beings, but you're getting through to them at last, cherub. My name is Progenoskis, if you please, mouse creature. The Farandolae was not amused. My name is Sporos, a reproving twingle. Meg, Progenoskis kithed deeply to her, do you realize what has just been happening? You've been close to Mr. Jenkins, haven't you? I guess so. And yet your bodies are not close together. And you already know that nothing can separate you from Calvin when you kithe together. Yes, she was with Calvin. They were together. She felt the warmth of his quick smile, a smile which always had a slight quirk of sadness and acceptance, unusual in a 16-year-old. He was not kithing in words now, but in great waves of courage, of strength, flowing over and through her. She accepted it, absorbed it. Fortitude. She was going to need a great deal. She opened herself, drank it in. All right, Progenoskis told them. We are together. We can continue. What are we to do? Mr. Jenkins asked. The second test, the cherubim urged. We must pass the second test. And that is to name Sporos, as Meg had to name you. But Sporos is already named. Not until he has deepened. I don't understand. When Sporos deepens, Progenoskis told Mr. Jenkins, it means that he has come of age. It means that he grows up. The temptation for Farandolae, or for man, or for star, is to stay an immature pleasure seeker. When we seek our own pleasure, as the ultimate good, we place ourselves as the center of the universe. A Farah, or a man, or a star, has his place in the universe, but nothing created is the center. Meg asked, the little Farandolae who saved me, they came of age, Meg? She pondered this. I think I understand. I don't, Mr. Jenkins said. I thought we came here to try to help Charles Wallace, that he is ill because of his mitochondria. Progenoskis pushed back his impatience. He is. But what does Sporos have to do with Charles Wallace? The balance of life within Yada is precarious. If Sporos and the others of his generation do not deepen, the balance will be altered. If the Farandolae refuse to deepen, the song will be stilled and Charles Wallace will die. The ecthroi will have won. But a child? Mr. Jenkins asked. One small child, why is he so important? It is the pattern throughout creation. One child, one man, can swing the balance of the universe. In your own Earth history, what could have happened if Charlemagne had fallen one minor skirmish? It would have been an ecthroi victory, and your history would have been darker than it is. Mr. Jenkins, May called, listen, I just remembered. For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the rider was lost. For want of a rider, the message was lost. For want of the message, the battle was lost. For want of the battle, the war was lost. For want of the war, the kingdom was lost. and all for the want of a horseshoe nail. We must save Charles Wallace, Mr. Jenkins cried. What can we do, Progo? What can we do? So, it's like bearing one long run on... I know, right? That was long. I'm just reading. All the mitochondria mentioned in the Bible. Is there? No, it's A Wrinkle in Time trilogy. It's the second book, A Wind in the Door. It's not supposed to be funny, no. It's just bedtime story reading. Oh, thank you, Alan. Good morning, cowboy. Thank you, Andrew, for the ice cream cone. Linked uses 2,000 points. Oh my gosh, Linked, stop. Oh my gosh, you guys are ridiculous. Hello, I'm doing alright. Oh my goodness, we are halfway there, peeps. Let's keep it up. Whoop, whoop. Oh my gosh, Sal. What's up, you guys? It's like... Alright. So that was chapter 10. We only have 2 more chapters. I think we're going to finish tonight. I am streaming tomorrow. Yes, it is I don't know the right term that I'm going to start using for it, but Sundays are going to be like a special stream day, and tomorrow is like a co-stream day. Sunday streams are going to be a little bit different than my normal weekday streams, but Average Calamities is coming over, and we're going to do like a painting miniatures, like D&D miniature things, kind of like what we were doing, but we're going to be here, and I'll be streaming on my Twitch. Oh, thank you, T. Specialty Sundays. Yes, there we go. I like that. Mega. Sorry, too busy tapping to type. Oh my gosh, you are so fine. Boop. Post stream? Yeah, maybe. Oh, it's a working title. I like the color black on you. This is actually a plum. It's a plum purple. It's hard to tell because it's like the lighting and everything, but thank you. I do like the black on me too. Oh, thank you, Terry. So for anybody in here, we are reading the second book of the trilogy. These are like the 3. It's mirrored. I can't go backwards. So the first book is A Wrinkle in Time. Then the second book is what we're on now, A Wind in the Door. And then the last book of the trilogy is A Swiftly Tilting Planet. So we're in the second book, and we are on chapter 11. There's only 12 chapters in this book, so we're almost done. And if you have not been catching up and you actually do like the story, but you want to know the whole story, I have all of my previous TikTok live recordings doing these same things on my YouTube channel. So, thank you. Alright, chapter 11. Sporos. A burst of harmony, so brilliant that it almost overwhelmed them, surrounded Meg, the cherubim, Calvin, and Mr. Jenkins. But after a moment of breathlessness, Meg was able to open herself to the song of the Farandolae, these strange creatures who were deepened, rooted, yet never separated from each other, no matter how great the distance. We are the song of the universe. We sing with the angelic host. We are the musicians. The Farandolae and the stars are the singers. Our song orders the rhythm of creation. Calvin asked, "How can you sing with the stars?" There was surprise at the question. It is the song. We sing it together. That is our joy and our being. But how do you know about stars? In here, inside. How could Farandolae not know about stars when Farandolae and stars sing together? Thank you guys. Oh my gosh, you guys are so awesome. Thank you so much. You can't see the stars. How can you possibly know about them? Total incomprehension from the Farandolae. If Meg and Calvin kithed in visual images, this was their limitation. The Farandolae had moved beyond physical sight. Okay, Calvin said. I know how little of ourselves and of our brains we've learned to use. We have billions of brain cells, and we use only the tiniest portion of them. Mr. Jenkins added with his dry, ropey knife. I have heard that the number of cells in the brain and the number of stars in the universe is said to be exactly equal. Progo, Meg asked. You memorized the names of all the stars. How many are there? How many? Great heavens, Earthling, I haven't the faintest idea. But you said your last assignment was to memorize the names of all of them. I did. All the stars in all the galaxies, and that's a great many. But how many? What difference does it make? I know their names. I don't know how many there are. It's their names that matter. The strong Kythine of the Fairy joined Projanowski's and the song. If it were not for the support of the singing of the galaxies, we Fairy and Yada would have lost the melody. So few of the Farandolae are deepening. The Unnamers are at work. Meg felt a sudden chill, a pulling back, a fading of the deepened Fairy. There was dissonance in the harmony. The rhythm faltered. In her mind's eye, an image was flashed of a troop of Farandolae dancing wildly about one fairy tree, going faster and faster until she felt dizzy. Sporos is with them, Projanowski's told her. What are they doing? Why are they spinning faster and faster? The circle of Farandolae revolved so rapidly that it became a swirling blur. The fronds of the great Farah, around whom they swirled, began to droop. They are absorbing the nourishment which the Farah needs. The Farah is Senex, from whom Sporos came. There was chill in Projanowski's words. The speed of the dancing Farandolae became like a scream in Meg's ears. Stop, she cried. Stop it at once. There was nothing merry or joyful in the dance. It was savage, wild, furious. Then, through the raging of the dance came a strong, pure strain of melody, quiet, certain, noble. The dancing Farandolae broke their circle and scampered about aimlessly. Then, led by Sporos, they raced to another Farah and began circling it. The fronds of Senex greened, lifted. Projanowski said, He is strong enough to hold out longer than any of the other Fairy, but even Senex cannot hold out forever. He stopped abruptly. Feel. Feel? The rhythm of the mitochondrion. It is my fearfulness, or is it Yada faltering? It is not you, Meg answered the cherubim. They were all very still, listening, feeling. Again there came a slight irregularity in the steady pulsing, a faltering, a missed beat. Then it steadied and continued. Oh, thank you. Like a gash through the non-light of Yada, Meg had a brief vision of Charles Wallace lying in his small room, gasping for air. She thought she saw Dr. Louise, but the strange thing was that she could not tell whether it was Dr. Louise Culebra or Louise the actual Culebra. Don't give up. Breathe. Charles breathed. And a steady voice. It's time to try oxygen. Then she was drawn back within the mitochondrion to Senex, the parent tree of Sporos. She tried to convey to him what she had just seen, but she received nothing from him in return. His incomprehension was even greater than Mr. Jenkins had been. She asked Projanowski's, Does Senex know that Charles Wallace even exists? As you know that your galaxy, the Milky Way, exists, does he know that Charles Wallace is ill? As you know that your Earth is ill, by fish dying in the rivers, birds dying in the forests, people dying in the choked cities, you know by war and hate and chaos. Senex knows his mitochondrion is ill because the Farandolae will not deepen, and many Farah are dying. Listen. Kythe. A group of Farandolae whirled about a Farah. Fronds drooped, color drained. The dance was a scream of laughter. Ugly laughter. Meg smelled the stench, which was like the stench in the twins' garden when she had first encountered an Ecthro. She heard a voice. It was like a bad tape recording of Mr. Jenkins. You did not deepen and lose your power to move, to dance. No one can force you to. Do not listen to the Farah. Listen to me. The great central trunk of the surrounded Farah began to weaken. Meg tried to project herself into the dance, to break the vortex. Sporos, come out. Don't listen. You were sent to the teacher. You belong with us. Come out, Sporos. You are meant to deepen. Then it was as though she were the end skater in a violent game of crack the whip, and suddenly was flung so wildly across the ice that she crashed into the end of the rink. The force with which she had been thrown was so fierce that her kythine was completely blacked out. Breathe, Meg, breathe. It was Projanowski's using the same words which Louise was using with Charles Wallace. Breathe, Meg, you're all right. She reeled, staggered, regained her balance. Again she heard the ugly laugh and the false Mr. Jenkins' voice urging, "Kill the Farah." Then came Mr. Jenkins' own voice. "I see. I understand." She felt emanating from him a dry, dusty acknowledgement of unpleasant fact. She returned sharply, still slightly breathless. "I don't understand." Mr. Jenkins asked her, "Why did Hitler want to control the world? Or Napoleon? Or Tiberius?" "I don't know. I don't know why anyone would. I think it would be awful." "But you admit that they did, Margaret." "They wanted to," she conceded, "but they didn't succeed. They did a remarkably good job of succeeding for a period of time, and they will not lightly be forgotten. A great many people perished during the years of their rules. But Farandolae, why would little Farandolae, like Sporos, they appear to be not that unlike human beings?" She felt cold and quiet. Once Mr. Jenkins had accepted the situation, he understood it better than she did. She asked, "Okay, then what have the Ecthroi got to do with it? They're behind it, aren't they?" Projanowski's answered, "The Ecthroi are always behind war." Meg turned in anguish towards Senex, calm and strong as an oak tree, but unlike the oak, pliable, able to bend with wind and weather. "Senex, we've been sent to help, but I'm not strong enough to fight the Ecthroi. I can't stop Sporos and the other Farandolae from killing the Farah." "Oh, Senex, if they succeed, won't they kill themselves too?" Senex responded, coldly, quietly, "Yes." "This is insane," Mr. Jenkins said. Projanowski's answered, "All war is insane." "But, as I understand it," Mr. Jenkins continued, we are a minutely immeasurable part of Charles Wallace. We are. Therefore, if, while we are on, or rather in, this mitochondrion, if Charles Wallace were to die, then, we die too. Then I fight not only for Charles Wallace's life, but for Meg's and Calvin's and your own." Meg felt Mr. Jenkins' total indifference to his own life. She was not yet willing to accept the burden of his concern for her. "We mustn't think about that. We mustn't think about anything but Charles." Projanowski's wound around the thought, and through her thoughts. "You cannot show your concern for Charles Wallace now except in concern for Sporos. Don't you understand that we're all part of one another, and the Ecthroi are trying to splinter us, in just about the same way that they're trying to destroy all creation?" The dancing Farandolae whirled and screamed, and Meg thought she could hear Sporos' voice. "We're not part of anybody. We're Farandolae, and we're going to take over Yada. After that, a hideous screech of laughter assailed Meg's ears. Again she flung herself at the dance, trying to pull Sporos out of it. Senex drew her back with the power of his scythe. "Not that way, not by force. But Sporos has to deepen, he has to." Then, around the edges of her awareness, Meg heard a twinkling, and Calvin was with Sporos, trying to reach out to him, to kite with him. Sporos' response was jangly, but he came out of the wild circle and hovered on its periphery. Why did Blagini send you alien life forms to Yada with me? How can you possibly help with my schooling? We make music by ourselves, we don't need you." Meg felt Projanowski's volcanic upheaving, felt a violent wind, searing tongues of flame. "Idiot, idiot." Projanowski's was sending, "We all need each other. Every atom in the universe is dependent on every other. I don't need you." Suddenly, Projanowski's kithed quietly and simply, "I need you, Sporos. We all need you. Charles Wallace needs you. I don't need Charles Wallace." Calvin kithed urgently, "Don't you? What happens to you if something happens to Charles Wallace? Who have you been listening to? Sporos withdrew. Meg could not feel him at all. Caliban emanated frustration. I can't reach him. He slips away from me every time I think I'm getting close. Sporos was pulled back into the whirling circle. The surrounded pharaoh was limp, all life draining rapidly. Senex mourned. His song is going out. Projanowski's kithed, exed, snuffed out like a candle. Senex's fronds drooped in grief. Sporos and his generation listened to those who would silence the singing. They listened to those who would put out the light of the song. Mr. Jenkins raised shadowy arms prophetically. To kill the song is the only salvation. No, Mr. Jenkins cried to Mr. Jenkins. You are only the mere vision of me. You are nothing. Nothing, nothing, nothing. The word echoed, hollow, empty, repeating endlessly. Everywhere Meg kithed, she seemed to meet a projection of an Ecthros Mr. Jenkins. Don't you understand that the Ecthroi are your saviors? When everything is nothing, there will be no more war, no illness, no death. There will be no more poverty, no more pain, no more slums, no more starvation. Senex kithed through the Ecthros. No more singing. Projanowski's joined Senex. No more stars or cherubim or the light of the moon on the sea. And Calvin, there will never be another meal around table. No one will ever break bread or drink wine with his companions. Meg kithed violently against the nearest Ecthros, Mr. Jenkins. You are nothing. You are only borrowing Mr. Jenkins in order to be something. Go away. You are nothing. Then she was aware that the real Mr. Jenkins was trying to reach her. Nature abhors a vacuum. Calvin replied. Then we must fill the vacuum. That is the only thing to do. How? If the Ecthroi are nothingness, emptiness, then that emptiness can be filled. Yes, but how do we fill it? Senex kithed calmly. Perhaps you don't want to fill it strongly enough. Perhaps you do not yet understand what is at stake. I do. A little boy. My brother. What do you know about my little brother? Senex conveyed considerable confusion. He had a feeling for the word brother because all fairy are and had been brothers, but little boy meant nothing to him whatsoever. I know that my galactic host is ill, perhaps dying. That's Charles Wallace. That's my little brother. He may be a galactic host to you, but to me he's just a little boy like Sporos. She turned her kithe from Senex and turned the wildly dancing Farandolae, who had surrounded another Farah. This time she kithed herself toward them cautiously. How could she be sure which one was Sporos? In Ecthros, Mr. Jenkins whinnied with laughter. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. A harsh twang wounded the melody of the Faerie, who were still singing. Once again, Meg felt faltering in the mitochondrion. Yada was in pain. Suddenly, she remembered the Farandolae who had saved her from the Ecthros when Projanowski's brought her into Yada. Not all the Farandolae had thrown in their lot with the Ecthroi, or were those who had exed themselves that she might live the only ones who would defy the Ecthroi? She began calling urgently, Sporos, Farandolae, come away from the Ecthroi. You will dance yourselves to death. Come to Senex and deepen. This is what you were born to do. Come. Some of the Farandolae faltered. Others whirled the faster, crying, We don't need to deepen. That's only an old superstition. It's a stupid song they sing. All this glory. We are the ones who are glorious. The stars, Meg called desperately. Another superstition. There are no stars. We are the greatest beings in the universe. Ugliness seeped past Meg and to Sporos. Why do you want to deepen? Sporos' twinkling was slightly dissonant. Farandolae are born to deepen. Fool. Once you deepen and put down roots, you won't be able to romp around as you do now. But you'll be stuck in one place forever with those fuddy-duddy fairy, and you won't be able to run or move again. But the strength and calm of Senex cut through the ugliness. It is only when we fully rooted that we are really able to move. Indecision quivered throughout Sporos. Senex continued. It is true, small offspring. Now that I am rooted, I am no longer limited by motion. Now I may move anywhere in the universe. I sing with the stars. I dance with the galaxies. I share in the joy and in the grief. We fairy must have our part in the rhythm of the mitochondria, or we cannot be. If we cannot be, then we are not. You mean you die? Meg asked. Is that what you call it? Perhaps, I am not sure. But the song of Yada is no longer full and rich. It is flaccid, its harmonies meager, but our arrogance we make Yada suffer. Meg felt Calvin beside Senex, urging, Sporos, you are my partner. We are to work together. Why? You're no use to me. Sporos, we are partners, whether you like it or not. Meg joined in. Sporos, we need you to help save Charles Wallace. Why do we have to bother about this Charles Wallace? He's nothing but a stupid human child. He's your galaxy. That ought to make him special enough, even for you. A cruel slashing cut between their kything, as though a great beak had cut a jagged wound. Sporos, it is I, Mr. Jenkins. I am the teacher who is greater than all teachers because I know the Ecthroi. Meg felt Prochnoski's kything clamp like steel. The Ecthros, Mr. Jenkins, was holding Sporos and speaking with honey-sweet words. Do not listen to the earthlings. Do not listen to the Faerie. They are stupid and weak. Listen to me, and you will be powerful like the Ecthroi. You will rule the universe. Sporos, the real Mr. Jenkins' kything was not strong enough to break through the stream. He's not Mr. Jenkins. Do not listen. Calvin's kyth came more strongly than Mr. Jenkins. There are 2 Mr. Jenkinses by you, Sporos. 2 Mr. Jenkins kything you. You know that one is not real. Deepen, Sporos. That is where your reality lies. That is how you will find your place and how you will find your true center. Meg's mind's ears were assailed by a howling which was ecthroid. Though it appeared to come from the pseudo Mr. Jenkins, reality is meaningless. Nothing is the center. Come, join the others in the race. Only a few more Faerie to surround, and you will have Yada for your own. Yada will die, Meg cried. You will all die. You will die. If you come with us, you will be nothing. The Ecthros, Mr. Jenkins spoke in cloying kyth, and nothing can happen to nothing. Sporos' long whiskers trembled painfully. I am very young. I should not be asked to make major decisions for several centuries. You're old enough to listen to Senex, Meg told him. You're old enough to listen to me. After all, I'm a galaxy to you. It's time for you to deepen. Sporos wriggled in the clasp of Ecthros, Mr. Jenkins. Come, Sporos, fly with the Ecthroi. Then you will crackle across the universe. There are too many mitochondria in creation. There are too many stars in the heavens. Come with us to not. Deepen, Sporos, my child, deepen. Sporos, the Ecthroid howl beat against the rhythm of Yada. We will make you a prince among Ecthroi. Meg felt a gust of wind, the familiar flicker of flame. Progenoskis. The cherubim flung his kything across the void of the Ecthroi's Mr. Jenkins, like a rope flung from cliff's edge to cliff's edge. Sporos, all Farandolae are royal. All singers of the song are princes. Nonsense. In name only. The name matters. Only to matter. Progenoski's kything was so gentle that it undercut the storm of Ecthroi. You are created matter, Sporos. You are part of the great plan, an indispensable part. You are needed. Sporos, you have your own unique share in the freedom of creation. Do not listen to that hideous cherubim. He's nothing but a deformed emanation of energy. We will give you no name, and you will have power. Calvin pushed in again. Sporos, you are my partner. Whatever we do, we must do it together. If you join the wild Farandolae again, I am coming into the dance with you. Sporos quivered. To help kill the Faerie? No, to be with you. Meg cried. Progo, let's go, too. We can help Calvin. In her impetuous relief at having something to do, she did not feel the cherubim pulling her back, but plunged into the irrational tarantula and was immediately swept out of control. Calvin was whirling beside Sporos, unable to pull him away from the circle closing in on the dying Farah. Meg was totally in the power of the revolving, twangling Farandolae. The orbital velocity sucked her in, through the circle and against the limp trunk of the pharaoh. Within the deathly center of the dance, it was dark. She could not image the whirling Farandolae. She could not kite Calvin or Sporos. She heard only a silence which was not silence, because within this vortex there was an emptiness which precluded the possibility of sound. Caught in this anguished vacuum, she was utterly powerless. She was sucked against the trunk of the pharaoh, but the pharaoh was now too weak to hold her up. It was she who had to hold the dying, deepened one, to give it her own life's blood. She felt it being drained from her. The pharaoh's trunk strengthened. It was Meg who was dying. Then arms were around her, holding her, pouring life back into her. Mr. Jenkins' arm, the real Mr. Jenkins. His strength and love filled her. As she returned to life, the firm, rhythmic tendrils of the reviving pharaoh caressed her. Mr. Jenkins held them both, and his power did not weaken. The murderous circle was broken. Calvin held Sporos in his arms, and a tear slid down his cheek. Meg turned toward him to comfort him. The moment she kithed away from Mr. Jenkins and Calvin, a new circle formed, not of Farandolae, but of Mr. Jenkins's. Mr. Jenkins's swirling their deathly ring around the real Mr. Jenkins. Meg whirled back toward him, but it was too late. Mr. Jenkins was surrounded. Meg cried, "Deep in Sporos is the only hope." The scattered Farandolae darted hither and thither in confusion. Projanowski's reached out wing after invisible wing to pull them in. There was a frightened twinkle. "Look at the ecthoroi," Projanowski's commanded. "They are killing Mr. Jenkins as they made you kill your own pharaoh. Look, this is what it is like." "Mr. Jenkins," they called. "We have to save Mr. Jenkins." "Oh, Sporos, deepen. It's the second ordeal. You must deepen." "For Mr. Jenkins? For yourself. For all of us." "But why did Mr. Jenkins... Didn't he know what would happen to him?" "Of course he knew. He did it to save us." "To save us all," Calvin added. "The ecthoroi have him, Sporos. They are going to kill him. What are you going to do?" Sporos turned toward Senex, the pharaoh from whom he had been born. He reached out small green tendrils toward all the Farandolae. "It is deepening time," he said. They heard a faint echo of the music which had been such joy when Blageni took them to witness the birth of a star. The pharaoh were singing, strengthening. Sporos was joining in the song. All about them, Farandolae were deepening and adding their music to the flowing of the song. Meg's exhaustion and relief were so great that she forgot Mr. Jenkins. She assumed blindly that now that Sporos and the other Farandolae were deepening, now that the second ordeal had been successfully accomplished, all was well. The ecthoroi were vanquished. Charles Wallace would recover. She could relax. Then she felt Projanowski's pushing through her thoughtlessness. "Meg, you forget. There are 3 tests." She turned from rejoicing. The circle of pseudo-Mr. Jenkinses was whirling wildly about the principal, closing in on him. Projanowski's kithed so strongly that she was pulled back into painful awareness. "We cannot let the ecthoroi get Mr. Jenkins. This is the 3rd test. To rescue Mr. Jenkins. Senex, Sporos, everybody. Help us." Meg heard a shrill, high scream, a scream that turned into a horrible laugh of triumph. It came from Mr. Jenkins. One Mr. Jenkins. There was no longer a spiral of ecthoroi Jenkinses surrounding the principal. They had closed in and entered their prey. Projanowski's kithing cut like a knife. "The ecthoroi have him. We must get him away." That's the last of that chapter. I accidentally swiped and he likes the number drops. Oh no, does it? Water check. I don't have water, but I do have this. It's healthy-isher. How are you doing? Good peeping. Foodie, hi. Hello. This monster pipeline punching goes for those likes. Out there loving on a prayer. Oh my gosh, yes, we are at 8.7. 9,000 likes. Jerome! She's for book reading. Thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you, South. Thank you. Thank you, Lyndon. Hello, hello. Hello, Star. I'm lost without pictures. You're gonna come in here, please? Oh, thank you, thank you. Thank you for that reminder. I appreciate it. I have been better, but I'm alright. Same. I feel ya. Struggle bus together. Alright, so this, pretty sure is the last chapter. Yes, this is the last chapter. Soothing Life. Aw, thank you, mister. I hope things will be alright. Yeah, me too. As always, if you need anything, well, we got our community here. Everybody, all the known community are all great people and willing to help. We all can struggle through together. Doing all right. Struggle bus as usual, but you know, I got you guys. So far positive news, so I'm just praying. Okay, good. Praying with you. And, okay, so ready for the last chapter? This is exciting. Last chapter, and then we can start the last book of the trilogy, A Swiftly Tilting Planet. Here's Keto. Come on. Hey, baby. Come on. Lay down. We are reading, oh my goodness, thank you, I just saw that. We are reading the second book of A Wrinkle in Time trilogy. It's called A Wind in the Door. We're on the very last chapter. And then we're on to, next live will be the third book. But I will make sure I get these last chapters uploaded to my YouTube channel so you guys can catch up before we get to the next chapter, or next book. Alright, so chapter 12, last chapter of this second book. This chapter is called A Wind in the Door. The Ekthros, Mr. Jenkins, reached toward them. The horrible, familiar stench assailed Meg. A loathsome chiding came to her in Mr. Jenkins' tones, superimposed on the whine of metal rubbing against metal. Nonsense. Of course the Ekthroi haven't got me. I am Mr. Jenkins, and I took the Ekthroi into me because they are right. It is not the Ekthroi who are empty. It was I. They have filled me with the pleasure of the abyss of nothingness. Come, let me X you. Come to me, come. Sporos's long, tendrily whiskers quivered. A faint twinkling came from them, but now he was kything, his young greenery moving rhythmically, his delicate new needles and leaves and blades shimmering with the rhythm of senex, of the singing fairy of Yada. Earthlings, forgive me. I will sing for you. The Ekthroid cannot bear the song. Mr. Jenkins kithed like a corkscrew. Life as we have been known is meaningless, Margaret. Civilization has failed. Your parents know this. They are giving up. No, Calvin protested. They're not like that. They'd never give up. Sing, Spores called to the deepening Farandolae. Sing with us. Our galaxy's in danger. We must save him. Mr. Jenkins overrode him. There is no hope except extinguishment. Let us hasten it. Meg cried through the boring of the corkscrew. Mr. Jenkins, no. Stop it. Calvin joined her. Mr. Jenkins, come back. Come out of the Ekthroid. I am back. I am here. I am finally myself. Nothing. X, Mr. Jenkins. To be X'd is the only good. Again, Meg felt a bone-shattering wrench. Every muscle in her cried out in protest. Then she was flashed a brilliant image of Calvin tugging at Mr. Jenkins. Powerful images of Calvin wrestling with Mr. Jenkins, suddenly wild and strong. Mr. Jenkins' thin, flabby arm beat at Calvin with steel spring blows. Calvin, with his lithe wiriness, eluded most of the blows and tried desperately to catch Mr. Jenkins by the wrists. Caught him. The wrists became talons, became nothing. Calvin was left holding nothing. Meg heard the screeching Ekthroid laugh, and then Mr. Jenkins hit Calvin a thundering blow. Meg saw a red blackness, Calvin reeling, being pulled, sucked into the vortex of the Ekthros, Mr. Jenkins. Then the images of Calvin staggering from the blow, steadying himself, readying himself, vanished. The images were gone, but Calvin was there, was with her, was part of her. She had moved beyond knowing him in sensory images to that place which is beyond images. Now she was Kything Calvin, not red hair or freckles or eager blue eyes or the glowing smile, nor was she hearing the deep voice with the occasional treble cracking. Not any of this, but Calvin. She was with Calvin, Kything with every atom of her being, returning to him all the fortitude and endurance and hope which he had given her. Then she felt Projanowski's trying to get her attention and turned her Kything unwillingly toward him. Meg, I can help Calvin, but I can't help Mr. Jenkins. You may be able to. Try to go to him. Perhaps you can still reach him. She pulled back. If she went to the Ekthros, Mr. Jenkins, would the pain of the Ekthroid take her again? There was no little Farandolae to save her this time. She could not do it, could not knowingly open herself to that pain. But Mr. Jenkins had come into the whirling circle of death for her sake. If Mr. Jenkins was possessed by Ekthroid now, it was because of his love for her. She gave a sigh of acceptance of what she must do. Then she turned her Kythe toward Mr. Jenkins, who was somewhere in the horrible Ekthroid version of himself. Mr. Jenkins. She flung her Kythe toward him with all her might, and now she no longer saw the thinning brown hair, the same mouse brown as her own, or the middle-aged eyes behind the lenses of the horn-rimmed spectacles, or the sloping shoulders with the light snowfall of dandruff, but something deeper, more real, beyond, past, through the senses, something which was the true person. She was with Mr. Jenkins as she had been with Calvin. Calvin, who was so important to her that she didn't dare even whisper to herself how important he was. Mr. Jenkins, too, was real, and she was with him, Kything herself entirely to him. From somewhere deep inside the Ekthroid version of himself, he was trying to say something. He was repeating, and finally she heard a phrase she had used earlier. Nature abhors a vacuum. The single phrase was all she could manage to hear. She held on to it. If the Ekthroid are nothing, and Mr. Jenkins is now part of that nothing, if Calvin is being X'd into that nothing, fill it came Calvin's desperate Kythe. Through it came a vivid image of Charles Wallace's, blue and gasping, her parents standing by his bed, Dr. Louise working the emergency oxygen tank, Fortinbras lying across the threshold as though to bar death from entering the room. Fill it. She was cold with desperation. Progo, what do I do? She heard only an echo of Calvin's call. Fill the vacuum. Fill it. He was fighting desperately, not for his own life, but for Meg's, for Charles Wallace's, for the singing fairy, for the whole of being. She kithed wildly. Progo, we passed the first test. I named Mr. Jenkins. And the second, Sporos, was deepened. Are we failing the third test? Calvin can't hold out any longer. Do I have to go under the Ekthroid? Is that what I have to do? What will you do if I fail? She knew what Projanowski's would do. Calvin was weakening rapidly, unable to counter the sledgehammer blows of the Ekthroid's Mr. Jenkins. She flung herself into Mr. Jenkins, trying to hold the cruel arms, trying to pull him away from Calvin by the sheer force of her Kythe, the pain. It came again, as she had known it would. Agony, red anguish pounding against her eyeballs. Charles Wallace was sharing in that anguish, his parents helpless as his small body convulsed in spasms of pain. They struggled to hold him, the Murrays, the Louises, to hold him during the convulsions, to give the racked frame support. Fortinbras stood in the doorway, growling, his hackles rising. The Ekthroid were. Meg's Kythe was faint, almost obliterated by pain. Calvin, Mr. Jenkins, don't fight the Ekthroid. Help me fill them. Cold beyond snow and ice and falling mercury. Cold beyond the absolute zero of outer space. Cold pulverizing her into nothingness. Cold and pain. She struggled. You are not to X me, Ecthroi. I feel you. Cold, darkness, emptiness, nothing, not, X. Then, Progenovsky's. A great cry, a tempest of wind, a lightning flash of fire across the cold, breaking, burning the cold and pain. Progenovsky's Xing. Wings, all the wings, stretched to their fullest span. Eyes, all the eyes opening and closing, opening, dimming. Oh no. Going out. No. Flame, smoke, feathers flying. Progenovsky's flinging his great cherubic self into the void of the Ecthroi who were Xing Mr. Jenkins and Calvin and Meg and Charles Wallace. Wings and flame and wind, a great howling of all the hurricanes in the world meeting and battling. Progo, her cry kithed across Yada, and then she knew what she must do. She must do as Mr. Jenkins had done when he had broken through the mad circle of whirling Farandolae and held her. She must hold the Ecthroi, hold them by holding Mr. Jenkins and Calvin, by holding Charles Wallace. Hold them, Meg, hold them all. Put your arms around them, around the Ecthroi spreading their gaping, tearing nothingness across creation. Size does not matter. You can hold them all. Charles and Calvin, and Mr. Jenkins, and the burning sphere of the newborn star. She cried out, I hold you. I love you. I name you. I name you, Ecthroi. You are not nothing. You are. A small white feather, which was not a feather, floated through the cold. I name you, Ecthroi. I name you, Meg. I name you, Calvin. I name you, Mr. Jenkins. I name you, Progenovsky's. I fill you with naming. Bee, butterfly and behemoth, bee galaxy and grasshopper, star and sparrow. You matter. You are. Bee, caterpillar and comet, bee porcupine and planet, sea sand and solar system. Sing with us, dance with us. Seagulls and seraphim, worms and host, chrysanthemum and cherubim. Sing for the glory of the living and the loving, the flaming of creation. Sing with us, dance with us, be with us. They were not her words only, they were the words of Senex, of the deepening Sporos, of all the singing Ferae, the laughter of the greening Farandolae, Yada itself, all the mitochondria, all the human hosts, the earth, the sun, the dance of the star whose birthing she had seen, the galaxies, the cherubim and the seraphim, wind and fire, the words of the glory. Ecthroi, you are named, my arms surround you, you are no longer nothing, you are. You are filled, you are me, you are Meg. Meg. Her encircling arms were around Charles Wallace. Where? Where does it matter? Here in Charles Wallace's familiar room, Meg, Calvin, Mr. Jenkins, one Mr. Jenkins, the real Mr. Jenkins. The Murrays, Dr. Louise, her stethoscope swinging loosely about her neck, looking disheveled, exhausted, happy. The twins, Dennis with a big smudge of garden earth across his face, both boys still grubby and tired from their labors, and Charles Wallace sitting up in bed, breathing quite easily and normally. Fortinbras no longer guarded the door, which now stood invitingly open. The oxygen tank, no longer needed, was in the corner. Charles, oh Charles Wallace, Meg hugged him, swallowing a large and unexpected sob. Are you all right? Are you really all right? He's much better, Dr. Louise said. We know very little about mitochondritis, but her delicate little bird's voice faded off, and she looked questioningly at Meg. So did her father. Whatever happened? Wherever were you? Charles Wallace was talking about mitochondria and Farandolae and his delirium, and something which sounded like Ecthroi. And about you, her mother added. Meg explained flatly. We were in one of Charles Wallace's mitochondria. Mr. Murray pushed his spectacles up his nose in the same gesture which his daughter used. So he said. He looked at his youngest son. I am not in a doubting mood, Mrs. Murray said. Just when we thought it was all over, Charles Wallace gasped, "The ecthroi are gone," and suddenly his breathing started to improve. "All I can say," Dennis said, "is that when Charles Wallace goes back to school, he'd better not talk the way he was doing while he was delirious." "I don't understand any of this," Sandy said. "I don't like things I don't understand." "If Mother and Father hadn't been so upset about Charles Wallace," Dennis glared at Meg, "they'd have been furious with you for not coming right home from school." "Where were you anyhow?" Sandy asked. "Do you really expect us to swallow this stuff about your being inside Charles Wallace?" "If you'd just be realistic for once. After all, we were worried too. And then some." They looked at Meg, then wheeled and looked at Mr. Jenkins. Mr. Jenkins said, "Meg is quite correct, and I was with her." The twins replied with total and stunned silence. Finally, Dennis shrugged and said, "Maybe one day someone will get around to telling us what really went on. I suppose since Charles is all right, we'll just be glad about that. All's well that ends well and all that stuff. Even if everybody's holding out on us as usual." They turned to Dr. Louise. "Charles is really okay? Is Charles really all right?" Dr. Louise answered them, "It's my opinion that he'll be completely recovered in a day or so." Meg confronted Mr. Jenkins. "Okay, but what about school? Won't the trouble there go on just as miserably as ever?" Mr. Jenkins sounded his most acid. "I think not." "What will you do, Mr. Jenkins? Can you make things different?" "I don't know. I cannot dictate Charles Wallace's safety. He must learn himself to adapt. But I have less fear of the situation than I did before. After our recent experiences, the old red schoolhouse is going to be easier to enter each morning. Now I think that I am going to find upgrading an elementary school a pleasant change, and at the moment it seems quite a possible change." The twins again looked astonished. Sandy asked in a deflated way, "Well then, isn't anybody hungry?" "We were so worried about Charles, we haven't eaten for—" "I'd like a turkey dinner," Charles Wallace said. Mrs. Murray looked at him, and some of the strain eased from her face. "I'm afraid I can't manage that, but I can thaw some steaks from the freezer. Can I come down when dinner is ready?" Dr. Louise looked at him with her sharply probing gaze. "I don't see why not. Meg, you and Calvin stay with him until then. The rest of us will go to the kitchen to be useful. Come along, Mr. Jenkins. You can help me set the table." When the three of them were alone, Charles Wallace said to Calvin, "You didn't say a word." "I didn't need to." Calvin sat on the floor of Charles Wallace's bed. He looked as tired as Dr. Louise, and as happy. He put one hand lightly over Meg's. "It will be good to have a feast together and celebrate." Meg cried, "How can we have a feast without Progo?" "I haven't forgotten Progo, Meg." "But where is he?" "Meg, he X'd himself." "But where is he?" "Where doesn't matter." Calvin's hand pressed more strongly against Meg's. "As Progo might say, he is named, and so he's all right. The ecthroi did not get Progo, Meg. He X'd of his own volition." "But Calvin—" "Progenowski's is a cherubim, Meg. It was his own choice." Meg's eyes were too bright. "I wish human beings couldn't have feelings. I am having feelings, and they hurt." Charles Wallace hugged her. "I didn't imagine my dragons, did I?" As he had intended her to, she gave a watery smile. Immediately after dinner, Dr. Louise ordered Charles Wallace back to bed. Meg held out her arm to kiss him good night. She knew that he was aware of her feeling of incompleteness without Progenowski's, and as he kissed her cheek, he whispered, "Why don't you and Calvin go out the north pastures and the big rocks and look around?" She nodded, then glanced at Calvin. Wordlessly, they slipped out to the pantry and put on ski jackets. When they had left the house behind them, he said, "It's funny to talk instead of kithing, isn't it? I suppose we'd better get used to it." She watched close behind him, across the rich, newly spaded earth of the garden. "There are things we aren't going to be able to talk about in front of people except in kithing." Calvin reached for one of his mittened hands. I have a feeling we're not supposed to talk about them too much. Meg asked. But Blajini? Where's Blajini? Calvin's hand held hers firmly. I don't know, Meg. I suspect that he's wherever he's been sent, teaching. They paused at the stone wall. It's a cold night, Meg. I don't think Louise will come out. He climbed the wall and moved swiftly to the two glacial rocks. The great stones loomed darkly against the sky. The grass about them was crunchy with frost and empty. Meg said, Let's go to the star-watching rock. The star-watching rock lay coldly under the brilliance of the stars. There was nothing there. A tear trickled down Meg's cheek, and she wiped it away from the back of one mitten. Calvin put his arm around her. I know, Meg. I want to know what's happened to Progo, too. All I know is that somehow or other, he's all right. I think I know he's all right, but my mind would like to be in on the knowing, she shivered. We better go in. I promised your parents we wouldn't stay out long. She felt an extraordinary reluctance to leave, but she allowed Calvin to lead her away. When they reached the stone wall, she stopped. Wait a minute. Louise isn't, Calvin started, but a dark shadow slid out of the stones and coiled slowly and gracefully and bowed to them. Oh, Louise, Meg said, Louise. But Louise had dropped to the wall again and disappeared somewhere within it. Nevertheless, Meg felt comforted and reassured. In silence, they returned to the house. In the pantry, they hung their jackets on the hooks. The door to the lab was closed. So was the door to the kitchen. Then the kitchen door blew open with a bang. Sandy and Dennis were at the dining table, doing homework. Hey, Sandy said, you don't need to be so violent. You could just open the door. You don't have to take it off its hinges. We didn't touch the door, Meg said. It blew open. Sandy slammed his Latin text shut. That's nonsense. There's hardly any wind tonight. And what there is coming from the opposite direction. Dennis looked up from his math paper. Charles Wallace wants you to come upstairs to him. Meg shut the door at any rate. It's cold. Sandy got up and shut the door firmly. You were gone long enough. Did you count the stars or something? We don't have to count them, Meg said. They just need to be known by name. Calvin's eyes met hers for a long moment and held her gaze. Not speaking, not kithing, simply being. Then she went up to Charles Wallace. That's the end of it. That's the end of the second book. Oh, it's kind of sad. 12,000, oh my goodness. Hello. Thank you for the hi. Thank you for the gifts, you guys. Oh my gosh, Jazz, thank you so much for the roses.